If someone asked me what I wanted for dinner growing up, they would inevitably get one of three answers: hamburgers, hot dogs, or spaghetti. I knew what I liked, and I was not about to venture outside of that comfort zone. Right? I heard about the different food groups growing up, and I knew they were essential for my physical development. For instance, I knew vegetables were important for my health, but I chose to neglect them. I knew dairy was important, but if it wasn't ice cream, I didn't want anything to do with dairy. I was very deficient in the physical nutrition that I took in. Now, while typically as we get older, our willingness to venture into broader food groups opens up a bit, I find when it comes to our spiritual nutrition, we are often just like I was as a kid. We want hamburgers, hot dogs, and spaghetti, and nothing else. The problem is we are missing out on so many incredibly helpful, enriching things that go into a spiritual diet that form healthy Christians. So let's dive into Luke 21 and discover one aspect of our spiritual diet that I believe is one of the most neglected components of our faith for growing healthy Christians. So we're going to read Luke 21, verses 34 through 36. Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and the anxieties of life, and that day will close on you suddenly like a trap. For it will come on all those who live on the face of the whole earth. Be always on watch and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man. Almost the entirety of chapter 21 has to do with Jesus providing details about his second coming, when he returns. In essence, what Jesus is saying in these verses is to be careful that we don't get so caught up in the pleasures of life and therefore fall so in love with the system of the world that we become indifferent about his return. Now let's ask two questions. Why have we as the church in recent memory given so little attention to the spiritual nourishment that is provided through focusing on Christ's return? And why should we focus on his return when it may not even happen in our lifetime? Now, the early church excelled in the aspect of their spiritual diet concerning Christ's return. And the result was an enormous security when everything else was insecure. And this security propelled them to be obedient to Christ even if it cost them their lives. In other words, keeping Christ's return close to their hearts, it accelerated their discipleship. The reality of being with Christ is what enabled someone like Paul to proclaim to live as Christ and to die as gain. And when we live out our faith independent of the reality of Christ's return and the reality of the everlasting joy of being with him, it severely stunts our growth because inevitably it forces us to put all of our eggs in the basket of this earth, and it can result in a very cautious and passive faith that doesn't want to risk because we're very unaware of the reward waiting for us. I think there's a part of us that might feel a bit uneasy about focusing on the reality of Christ's return, thinking this means we're going to miss out on the earthly blessings by being so heavenly minded. I don't believe this is the case. Right? The utter security we have because of being in Christ is meant to propel us into radical abandonment. Right? It's almost like we get to go through this life using monopoly money. Right? If you run out, it doesn't really matter because it's not the actual form of money. There is something so much more real, right? Like a heavenly currency. As those of complete security in Christ, we are now free to live bold lives that point to God's kindness. In many ways, we can risk without actually risking anything. So I want to leave you with this encouragement. In your quiet time, spend some time reflecting on being in the presence of God for all of eternity.